Welcome to Commissioner's Corner. I'm your host, Lois Leonard, and thanks for joining us. It has been a challenging year with high emotions, ranging from quiet frustration to loud, angry voices. But now is the time to make your voice heard. It's time to vote. On November 3rd, you have the privilege of casting your vote for the next president of our country. But that's not the only question on this year's ballot. Joining us today is Boston's Election Commissioner, Eneida Tavares. We want to make sure you have all the details and motivation to show up and vote. Commissioner Tavares, it's wonderful to have you here I know you have such a busy schedule, so thanks for joining us today.
It's wonderful to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, let's start with the basics. If someone is not yet registered to vote, is there still time?
There is still time. The new voter registration deadline is October 24th. So anyone who is not registered or has a question about their voter registration should definitely check their voting status via the Secretary of State's website and make sure that you get registered. You can register to vote online. Most registrations or transactions can be completed online. However, residents should be aware that if they don't have a voter registration form, they will be prompted to print out their application and mail it in to us.
And do they have another option if they don't have access online? Is there another way that they can do it?
They can always come into our office and register to vote here. We are open to the public on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. However, we are a little flexible given that the election is fast approaching. We're a little bit flexible.
Right. And if someone has moved since they last registered, even though they still live in the city of Boston, but they've moved to another town, do they need to re-register?
They do need to re-register, which is why it's very important that voters are regularly checking on their voting status to make sure that they didn't miss updating their voter registration. Oftentimes people think that the registration moves with you, and that is not the case.
Very disappointing this year if you show up at the polls and you can't register for that reason. So everybody check that out. Well, there's been a lot of discussion about how to vote by mail, of course. So there's still time to do that, though, right? Let's answer any and all questions and possibilities.
That is correct. There is still time to vote by mail. That is a new option to all registered voters in the state of Massachusetts. So everyone should have received an application in the mail from the Secretary of State's office. They would first have to return that application signed, and we would mail them a ballot. So in addition to the paper application they received in the mail, voters can also now request their ballot online on mailmyballotma.com. That is something that's new for the November election. You will be first prompted to check your voting status, and if you're not registered, you can register. And once you verify your voting status, you'll be allowed to submit a vote by mail application, which will come directly to us.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say the deadline for doing that is October 28th.
Right, so it is twofold. They have to apply for the ballot, but there is still time. They have until the 28th of October. The quickest way, if you haven't already received that postcard in the mail, you can go online to do that, and we'll put the addresses on the screen here for everybody. But then the second step is after you receive that application, you have to get it signed, completely filled out, in by the 28th. But then after receiving the ballot back, then you have to fill that out again properly, and that has a deadline. What's the deadline for actually getting that back in?
So once we receive the voter's application, we will mail out a ballot, and we will include a set of envelopes for returning the ballot and a set of instructions. It's really important that they follow the instruction that comes with the ballot because we want to make sure that every vote is counted and that voters don't inadvertently miss signing the envelope. So it's very important that the envelope has a signature. The deadline for returning that ballot is it must be postmarked by November 3rd and arrive here by November 6th. If it's being returned by mail, I would encourage everyone to return that ballot as soon as possible, especially if it's going to be mailed back. Make sure that you're allowing at least 7 days, but I would encourage returning it as soon as possible. That is just one way you can return it. Ballots can always be dropped off here at City Hall. And then in addition to that, we have expanded the number of drop boxes that we have across the city. So during this September primary, we had 2 drop boxes available here at City Hall. We have since expanded that. We now have a total of 17 drop boxes across the city. They are accessible 24/7 and they are outdoors. So it's a contactless way for you to return your ballot if you have any COVID related concerns. They are all available now. They were installed yesterday. So make sure that you log on to our website if you're interested in finding out where these drop boxes are located. And they are also included in our flyer. We did do a mailing to every single household of all of the early voting locations, which we will get into, and all of the drop box locations. So if for some reason you don't have a mailer, log on to our website and you can find a list of locations.
Lots of drop boxes, just 17 different locations. So hopefully something convenient for everyone, including a couple drop boxes at City Hall itself. So just to go over those deadlines, if you are going to mail in your ballot, it has to be postmarked by November 3rd, election day, but it has to be postmarked by 8 p.m. So if I understand correctly, so don't show up at the post office, after 8 p.m. and put it in a box thinking that it's going to work. It has to be postmarked by 8 o'clock. Is that right?
That is correct. And I'm not sure if the post office will be open that late on election day, but it has to be postmarked on election. It has to be postmarked by the 3rd. So as long as it has the postmark date of the 3rd and arrives by the 6th, we will count it. But again, that's such a short turnaround time. Yeah. So I would encourage voters to do it a lot sooner.
Yeah, I have to say I've sent bills in by the mail thinking that I'd get it there in time, but of course things happen. So we want your vote to count. So there is also the old-fashioned way of voting, and that's in person. So and Boston's trying to make that as easy as possible. Early voting, in case some people don't even know that we have early voting, that begins on Saturday, October 17th. Is that right?
That is correct. It begins Saturday, October 17th and runs through October 30th with locations across the city in every single neighborhood. So on the 17th and 18th, we will be in 10 different neighborhood locations. So make sure that you take advantage of that and log onto our website to find out where those locations are. The 17th and 18th does include Fenway Park. That's something that I think everyone is excited about. But in addition to that, we will have voting during the weekday here at City Hall every day. So Monday through Friday, we're here from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Tuesdays and Thursdays, we're here until 8 p.m. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we will have additional sites out in the community as well during the 2-week voting period.
Great. So there's some later evening hours that are available. Again, you can go online and to boston.gov and find out the exact locations, the exact times. You have until October 30th to do that. So it's really, really wonderful, very, very convenient. In fact, something that I learned is in the situation of early voting, if you say you live in West Roxbury, but you work downtown, you don't necessarily have to vote in your specifically assigned polling location, as you normally do in person on November 3rd. You can go wherever you want in the city of Boston, right?
That is correct. And that's what's great about early voting. You can simply pick a location that is most convenient for you. And then in addition to our drop boxes, voters can return their vote by mail ballots to any of the early voting locations during their voting hours. So that is in addition to the 17 drop boxes. So that's something voters should be aware of.
I mentioned that some people don't even know that early voting exists. This is relatively new. This just began, I believe, in 2016. Is that right?
That is correct. It started in 2016. This is our 5th early voting cycle. So we have definitely made some adjustments. This early voting season is a little different. We now are mandated to have 2 full weekends, which is great. I think in 2016, we only had voting on during just 1 Saturday available. So now we have 2 full weekends of early voting.
Great. And I think you're going to be busy this year.
A little bit.
Yeah, more people do know now. But of course, the big day is Tuesday, November 3rd. And this year is unprecedented. How will the city address the COVID-19 issues, the safety issues the concerns for in-person voting?
So we are working to make sure that every voter and our election officers are all safe during this pandemic. We are supplying them with PPE. We're providing face shields, face masks, not only for our poll workers, but for any voter who may not have one. We will have face masks available. Our election officers are going to be trained to constantly disinfect and making sure that any high touch items or reusable items such as ballot markers are all disinfected before they can be redistributed. Our voting booths are going to be limited to just 2 marking shelves as opposed to 4. They'll be placed as close to the entrance as possible to limit the path of travel for the voters. And then in addition to all of that, we've assembled cleaning crews to go into every early voting location and every polling location to do a more thorough disinfecting every 2 to 3 hours.
Great. And for those with physical disabilities, what kind of access will they have, and what kind of situation are you creating to make things available for those?
So all of our polling locations are accessible to a voter who may have a disability. In addition to that, they are all equipped with an auto marking device. Our election officers are trained on how to assist persons with disability. That includes training from how to properly address someone with a disability, or knowing the technology that is available to them, and making sure that they're all well trained and can properly assist any voter. And not only when it comes to disability, but also language access as well. So we want to make sure that all of our polling locations are staffed with a variety of different languages, especially depending on what neighborhood you're in. Boston's a very diverse city, so we try to keep that in mind and make sure that we're staffing our polling locations accordingly. And in addition to all of that, on election day, we do have an interpreter's phone bank here in the office, staffed with a variety of different languages, just in case that assistance is not available in the language that the voter needs. They can just call downtown and we'll be able to assist them.
Great, great. Well, Commissioner, I'm curious, based on past state election years, can you give us some statistics? Can you, here in Boston, typically, how many people vote?
Well, we had a record number of people vote during the state primary in September. The voter turnout was 35% compared to just 9% in 2016. So that was a 25% increase, which was pretty amazing. We don't break it down to demographics. The last state election we had a 67% turnout. So that I'm hoping we hit the 80% mark. We prepare for 100% turnout, and that's what we always hope for. Because of the increase in September, I think we can safely anticipate that there will be a huge increase for November as well.
Great. So did you say 67% in the last time?
The last presidential, that's correct.
80%. Well, you know, even though you do expect a high turnout, there are those who will procrastinate. There are those who will not show up at the polls. So let's talk about what's on the ballot. Let's help convince everybody that they need to show up and vote. Let's talk about the questions that are also on the ballot this year.
There are 2 important ballot questions. One is the right to repair, and the other one is ranked choice voting. So I encourage everyone to log on to the state's website as well. Review your ballot, look at what's on your ballot, familiarize yourself with the questions, especially as we anticipate a higher turnout. We want to make sure that our lines move as fast as possible. So the better informed voters are, the better we can manage the flow of traffic inside of the polling location. So I encourage everyone to read questions 1 and 2. In addition to the office of the President of the United States, you're going to have your U.S. senators, your state senators, U.S. rep and state rep, your counselors and register of probate on the ballot. So again, anyone can log on to the state's database to view the choices on your ballot.
So some very important local politicians to choose from. And also, I would also encourage everyone to go online and or to read whatever you can about questions 1 and 2. Of course, if you have a TV or a computer, you've seen the ads, but of course, that doesn't always give you all the details. So be informed and get informed with all the details that you need so that you can make a decision that you feel good about because you know what's going on. So another thing that your office does that most people probably aren't aware, but you are also manage the city's annual census. And so how are you involved this year with the country's count?
Well, we did help kick things off this year with our census mailing. We did include information about the 2020 federal census, and that's something that we've tried to push in every avenue that we could, including encouraging all of our volunteers to do that as well, and just trying to push it out through our social media and every touch point with every mailing, a confirmation mailing when voters register, we helped to push out that information as well.
Well, your office is such a small one. If I understand correctly, there's not a lot of people that are in your office working. So how do you get all of this done? Not knocking on doors, I assume, for the census, and then working each individual poll. Early voting polls. How are you able to get the job done?
Well, this year looked a little bit different with the census because of COVID. It was a little bit different. We didn't do the door-to-door, but we were really busy preparing for the state primary. We have recruited up until this point a little over 2,000 election officers to serve on election day. We have a lot of seasonal workers and a lot of support from other city agencies in terms of sending us their workers to help volunteer, to help make sure that every single ballot is out the door in a timely manner so that voters can take advantage of the vote by mail process. I think so far we have mailed over 100,000 ballots, and we have 134,000 requests. So we are keeping up.
Are you still looking for volunteers?
We're taking volunteers here in the office. As of today, we actually had to shut down our poll worker portal because we have over 7,000 applicants, and it's really hard. It's wonderful. It's wonderful, and every election should be well staffed, such as this one is. We usually aim for 16 to 1,800, and as I mentioned, we're over 2,000, and that is going to hopefully prepare us for anyone who may have symptoms and can't serve on election day. We want to make sure that we have a nice supply of election officers in anticipation for anything that may come up.
Well, great to hear that the community is stepping up and volunteering. And you're right, let's hope that happens every year. So thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. Boston's Election Commissioner, Eneida Tavares, we do appreciate it during this busy, busy time.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you again. And thank you, our viewers, for watching. Never have our neighbors felt so divided. So let's put politics aside and cast your vote for the best person to bring us together and push this country forward. But you can't do that by sitting on the couch. The only way to make your vote count is to actually get out there and vote, whether it be by mail, early voting, or on November 3rd. And we'll see you next time on Commissioner's Corner.